So hi, Jack. Thank you so much for joining us today and talking about your experience of the Camino.
Oh, my pleasure.
Perfect. We're really excited about this. And maybe to start off, can you tell a bit more about yourself and where your passion for hiking came from?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jacqueline, or I go by Jack. I'm 35 years old and I live in Canberra. And I won't say I've been like a super outdoorsy person, but I just love walking. I grew up in the inner city in Brisbane, in a suburb called Paddington. So I have always just walked everywhere because that's what I love to do. And in fact, I didn't actually get my driver's license until I was 22 because I just walked everywhere I needed to go. Yeah. So, and then everywhere I've lived since then, I've just really enjoyed walking. And I just find there's something about walking. You don't have to keep pace with anyone. You can go as fast or as slow as you want. You can go as flat or as inclined as you want. And you can just really just go at your own pace. And just sort of, I find I really enjoy walking as a time to process stuff that's going on. Like if I've had a really busy day or I've had a lot going on, I just find it's great to just walk because I can just get through and like go through stuff in my head. And then I come home and I'm like, okay, I planned out that stuff now. So yeah, anyone who you speak to me, I'm always like, I'm just going for a walk. And they're like, okay, bye. So yes, it's definitely my like, when people like, what do you like to do? And I'm like, I like to walk a lot.
One of your biggest hobbies.
It's a great hobby, yeah. And in Canberra, where I live now, obviously, it's such a walk, like it's a walkable place. Our weather is amazing. I live not too far from the artificial lake that's in the middle of Canberra. So like every weekend, most days, every weekend, I'm out walking around the lake or up one of the little hills or the mountains that we've got close by. So yeah, we're very lucky to live here where we've got lots of options.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think 5 years ago, because you said your fifth year anniversary is coming up.
I know, right? Yeah. And you know what? I realized when I was looking back through my stuff tonight, I went, oh my God, I got the year wrong. I thought I walked in 2015. I didn't. I walked in 2014. So I'm actually 1 year earlier than I walked. I just blame it on COVID brain, right? 2020 has just thrown out like everything in my mind about remembering when things were. So it was 2014 now that I've gone back through my things.
Perfect.
So sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay. We know, like time just goes so quickly. So
it does.
Yeah,
it does.
sure.
It really does. Because honestly, it could have been like 5 weeks ago that I walked. There's so much about that time that is still really fresh in my head that I think about all the time. So in a way, it doesn't surprise me that I got the time frame wrong because it doesn't seem like it's been that long.
No. What made you decide to hike the Camino?
I can tell you exactly what made me do this. So it was in 2010. I was on a flight with work from Melbourne to Darwin. It was a Qantas flight, and I was reading the in-flight magazine, as you do. And there was an extract from a book. Actually, I think I might still have the book. And it was an extract from a book on the Camino, but it was a book about this lady's experience walking and eating on the Camino. So it was all about her food journey to Santiago. I'm getting goosebumps again, even just like thinking about this. And it was only like maybe a 5 or 6 page extract. And I just remember reading this and going, oh my God. And I was with my work colleague. I was like, oh my God, you need to read this. And she was like, oh yeah, that sounds like walk. I'm like, it sounds amazing. And she was like, okay, like she's like, something's a bit wrong with this girl. And so I took the magazine with me, which I never do. I never take an in-flight magazine because then I have a guilt about taking it for the next person. But I took it out and I read this. Honestly, I reckon I read that article about 6 times. And I got home and I went, you know what? I need to walk that. And I can't tell you what about it. I'm not a religious person. I know there's a lot of people that hike it for religious reasons, but I'm not. There was just something about it that spoke to me in a non-religious way and said, you need to do that. So that was in 2010. And then I worked backwards and I realized it was 2012 when I was in Brisbane on holidays at Christmas time. And there was a hiking shop in Fortitude Valley that is a hiking specialist, so an individual store. And I went and bought, because in their Christmas sales, all of my gear, because from that point on, I basically obsessively stalked internet chat rooms about like online discussion boards about the Camino, lists on gear, when is the best time to walk, can I go by myself, how fit do I need? Honestly, it was like obsessive for like 2 years. And so I bought all of my gear, like not even having an idea as to when I'd be able to go, because in my mind it was, you know, you read and it says to do like the French route and to start from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to get across to Santiago, it's about 5 weeks. So I was like, okay, well, I need definitely 5 weeks, and probably, you know, coming from Australia, it's a long way away. I want to maybe spend some time in Spain either side. So I need to have maybe 6 weeks or maybe even 7 weeks of leave. So I had to submit my leave 18 months in advance from my work for them to allow me to go for such a long time. So yeah, so I'm fortunate that I've worked for the company for a long time. So I had some long service leave to use as well. But it was trying to get them to agree to have me gone, because I'm quite critical in my business. So I had to give them the reassurance that things would not fall apart if I was hiking across Spain for 5 weeks. So, and then, you know, all the discussion boards are talking about wearing a new shoe. So I probably wore my Camino, the shoes I wore, for like a year before I went. Because I was like, I don't want to get blisters. And I'd read all this information about like how to avoid getting blisters and hot spots. So I felt like I don't know if this comes across, but I'm not a very go with the flow person. I want to be organized. I want to know what I'm doing, and I want to be planned. So I like refined, and even like right up to before I was going, I was like refining my packing list and rereading over what people had said that they had, you know, decided that wasn't useful. So in 2013, my best friend decided that she wanted to go, not with me, because she actually asked and I said no. She said she actually wanted to come with me and I said no. And she was like, why? And I'm like, because this is something that I want to do myself, and I don't, might sound a bit selfish, but I didn't want to share that journey with anybody else. I just wanted to experience it myself. And then even my partner at the time, I said, like, I love you, but this is something that I've been planning for years before we were together. So this is something that I need to do myself. And a lot of people couldn't really understand that. Like, why would you want to go by yourself? But I can be quite a solitary person, and I really liked the idea of going and doing this myself. But when you're on the Camino, you're never by yourself. You might be alone, but you're never lonely, because there are always other people that are walking. There are other people that you meet as you go. So I really liked the idea of being alone, but you wouldn't be lonely because there'd always be people around if you wanted to engage. So that was 2013. And so we decided what we would do is we would go to Paris together for a week. And then it turned out that she was going to go then on to Italy at the time that I was going to start my Camino. And she was going to spend time with her family. So we had a great week together in Paris, and then we got to the train station and I went one way waving and she went the other way waving. And that was the start of my Camino journey itself. And oh my, I can even just remember the feeling of like standing on that platform and getting on the train and waving out the window to her and being like, holy shit, like this is happening. Oh my God, this is actually happening. So
after years of planning and looking forward.
I know, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's just like this excitement, of like, I've been planning this for so long and finally like I'm about to start. So yeah, that was just the best feeling. And I'd pre-booked a little like bed and breakfast in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port with this beautiful little host guy, and he made us breakfast the next morning to make us, everyone who was staying there ready to go, and sent us off onto our first day with a wave and a friendly, have a great trip. So it was the best start. It was great.
And how was your first day on the trail?
So I don't want to say I cheated, but the only thing that I did that was probably, it made it a little bit easier for myself, was because I had been in Paris for a week before the Camino, and then I was going on to do a week in Barcelona at the end. I had my hiking backpack, but I also had a suitcase with me for like non-hiking tourist clothes, because I didn't want to like wear my Camino clothes in Paris because like, ew. So I'd organised with there's a basically like a courier service that couriers people who have suitcases like me and takes them from where you start and then drops them in a hotel in Santiago at the other end. And so I paid for this, and she said, would you like, because I had my normal Camino backpack, and then I had like a little tiny like day pack. So she's like, if you like, what I can do is I can drop because everybody on the first day, you all walk the same distance because you have to get up and over the Pyrenees. So there isn't any, there's one tiny place you can stop about 8 Ks up, but it's like everyone who gets there, you have to keep going. Yeah. So it's the second hardest day, and you have to go up over the Pyrenees, and then you end up in Roncesvalles on the Spanish side. So she offered to take my hiking backpack over the Pyrenees for me, so I only had to walk with my little day pack. And so I feel a bit like I kind of cheated because I only had a little pack, whereas everyone else was lugging their proper packs. But I'm really glad that I did that, because it was a really beautiful day, but it was bloody hot that day, and I was watching people struggling. There was this guy that I walked past, and I actually had dinner with him the night before. He was an American guy, and he had the biggest pack I had ever seen. I thought he was walking like the Appalachian Trail, honestly. Like, it was like he was kitted out, and I thought, oh my God, how are you gonna how he had laptops and I was like, and bedrolls, and I thought, I don't know how you're gonna make it, but everyone has their own journey and their own, thought process as to what they take, and we're not here to judge. And I ran into him. He'd started much earlier that day than I had started, and I passed him on the way, and the poor guy was just sweating buckets, and I was like, are you doing okay? And he's like, oh my God, he'd already chucked his bedroll. He just literally was just chucking stuff on the side of the road as he was going up the hill, because he was like, I can't carry all of this stuff. Like, it's too heavy. And I found it amusing, because when you get to the accommodation on the other side in Roncesvalles, they have a whole room full of discarded stuff that pilgrims have dropped off because they've gone over the mountain and just gone, I cannot take my 500 ml of body wash, or like the extra 3 pairs of sets of clothing that I thought I might need. So there's this whole section where it's like a shop that you can just go, if you've forgotten something, you just go and use something from the pilgrim discarded section. So but I feel very proud. I did not discard anything. I used, with the exception of my medication, there was nothing that I packed that I didn't use. So I feel like my determined research for years put me in good stead, because everything I had I used, and there wasn't anything that I was like, oh my God, I wish I had this with me. So I feel like that was like gold star for me. I felt okay. I really didn't do very much. Probably one thing I didn't do before I left is much training, because in my mind, I was like, it's just walking. Like, it's just walking. It's a lot of walking, and sure, it's uphill and whatnot, but it's just walking, right? So I sort of did a few, because I was still working full time. So I did like a few weekends of practice with my backpack and whatnot, just to make sure I was used to wearing it. So definitely the next morning I was very sore and really, really sunburnt, because I don't know if you can tell, I'm quite pale naturally, and although I put sunscreen on, because it was such a hot day, it just melted off you. And I will send you a photo of me the next morning, and the stripes on my arm, it's just like white and then red, and then my legs, you've got just these red stripes. And it took me, I'm not kidding, I think about 2 years for that to fade. It took so long. And then because every day you're walking, and I had 2 t-shirts and 2 pairs of tights, so I didn't bring, and it's hot, like I was walking I started on the 10th of September. So the first bit, it's really hot still when you're walking. And because when you're walking, you've got the sun coming to you on the same side all the time. So that arm just gets more and more heat and sun on it as you walk. So yeah, it was hello, mate. I know. Look, say hello. Where are you hiding? You gonna come and say hi? There's a little snooch. He's like, where's my dinner, Mum? I was definitely sore, not only like muscle sore, but definitely like sunburn sore for like 10 days. And I think it probably takes about, I would say, a week or so of walking before your body catches up to go, oh, okay, this is like your new normal now. This is what we're doing. Like I remember maybe 3 or 4 days in, I can't remember, I was walking, was past these fig trees and there was like a bench and I was like, I'm just going to sit down for a minute. And it like you were like this old person, like trying to like grasp onto things to sit down. And once I sat down, I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get back up again because my muscles had just seized. And I was just like, oh no. And there was another place that we got to, must have been, Estella, I remember, because it was like, Stella. I got into my accommodation and I basically like leaned on the counter because I couldn't put any weight on my legs any longer. I was like, oh my God. So there were definitely a few moments in that first week where I was like, far out. Maybe I should have been a bit better prepared on like the fitness front. But then your body is an amazing like thing where once it gets into the new rhythm of things, away you go. And by the end of it, like there were places I got to, I was like running upstairs, like you just felt so amazing. So yeah, that was definitely tough to start with. And I think because that first day is such a hard day of the track, I think it'd be different if you're starting off flatter, but you've got to get up over the Pyrenees that first day. So it's definitely like a wake-up call to people that like, this is hard.
Did you notice a clear pace difference between starting and ending?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So I think the first, like up until Burgos, I think you just sort of find, or at least the first week, you're just sort of finding your pace. The second week, it's okay. The biggest probably physical challenge I had was coming out of Burgos. I was walking with this English girl and I don't know, we were just chatting and I didn't notice, but I was walking much faster than I would say like my standard walking pace is because you're chatting away and I was just matching pace with her. And the next morning I got up and I was like, oh, my shin feels a bit funny at the front. And somebody else went, oh my God, really? And I was like, yeah, it just feels a bit like twingy. And they said, you're getting a shin splint. And I was like, what's a shin splint? Like I've never had one before, so I didn't know what to expect. So I just carried on that day and it sort of felt a little bit worse. And then the next day after that, I got up and I was like, oh my God, like I can barely walk. And I had all these plans for that day of what town I wanted to walk to. And I remember like I had gotten to maybe like a third of the distance of where I was intending to go that day. And there was like a town that was about 2 k's up the road. And I was walking like, I don't even think you could classify it as walking at that stage because I was basically just shuffling because I could barely move. And so I'd gotten into this town. They only had 3 hostels, albergs. So, and all 3 were full. So I got to the last one and the guy was like, sorry, we're full. And I was like, and he's like, you'll have to go, like, we're all full. You'll have to go to the next town, which is like 6 kilometers away. And I was like, oh, okay. And he just looked at me like, and then this other guy who could also speak, I know, like, oh, just calm down, lady. And then this guy came up who could speak Spanish. He's like, you okay? And I'm like, I got this shin split and I can't look anymore. He was like, okay. So then he conversed to the guy who was like rolling his eyes a bit. And then he's like, okay, they've got basically like a loft above a shed. And they're like, you can stay up there. And I was like, okay, done. I'm like, I would sleep on a hay bale amongst sheep if that's what I had to do, because I'm like, I honestly, I cannot walk any further. I just need to not walk. So that was probably my most, like, I would say my most mentally challenging part, because I was just like, I'd never had this before. And everyone says the only way you can get past a shin splint is rest. And I was like, I can't rest. I'm walking the bloody Camino. Like, what am I supposed to do? So I walked with it for about 270, 300 Ks. And I got to a stage, so I'd gone to a pharmacy, so I had like a compression bandage, but I just got to the stage where they were like, really, you just have to rest for like a whole day to just really kick it in and stop it. And I was like, okay. So that was the only other part of my Camino that I cheated, where I caught the train from, I think it was from Hontanas to Leon. Anyway, it was basically the equivalent of 2 days of walking. So I caught the train that distance so I could stay in Leon for 2 nights, so I didn't have to walk. So that's the only part. If I say I have a Camino regret, that's my only regret, is that I have this section of 2 days of walking that I haven't walked. So I'm like, but I feel like I've made up for it, because in lots of other parts where you could choose different ways to walk, I always picked the longer, the harder, you know, way. So I feel like, you know, in a way I'm made up for it. But yeah, that made a world of difference. So I stayed, and I was like, well, if I'm going to be in Lyon, I'm going to be there for 2 nights. I treated myself and I stayed in the Parador in Lyon, which is like the beautiful 5-star hotel that they've turned from a monastery. And, you know, you're there in these like shabby Camino walking clothes, all dirty and smelly, amongst these like beautifully dressed Spaniards who are all, you know, like nice. And I'm like, don't mind me, I'm just the dirty pilgrim in the background. But I stayed there, and I had a bath, I could wash my hair, and I think just being there and not moving around too much made all the difference. Because then from Lyon onwards, I was like a gun. I was off. I was like smashing out like 40 Ks a day. It was, it made a huge difference. So although I cheated, I feel like it was worth it. So, and next time I walk the Camino, that was my lesson then. It was like, you just need to walk at your own pace. If there's somebody that you're walking with that walks faster, don't try and walk faster than your natural pace is, because it's not worth it. So after that, if there was someone I had walked with for a bit that was naturally faster, I was like, you know what, you go ahead of me, it's all good, because I can't walk as fast as you do. So buen camino. See you later.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I'm glad to hear though that it helped to take some rest.
Yeah, for sure.
It really did. So because I think when I got to Burgos, I think I'd got in there like midday, and I think the next day I used as a rest day, and then left early the next morning. So and that was pretty much the only rest, like actual day of non-walking that I did. So in Burgos, and then when I got to Lyon, I had the 2 days of without walking. So I think, and that's sort of like 1/3 and then 2/3 across. So I feel like that it was a good way to sort of break it up. But I think that that's the beauty of the Camino, is that, you know, there was one lady that I walked past at one stage, and she was an older lady, as you know, a lot of people who are walking are in the older age group. And she was quite slow, but just slow and steady, and her natural pace was really slow, and she would only walk maybe, you know, 5, maybe 10 Ks a day, and that was the limit that she was capable to do. But she was totally happy with that, and that was the way that she wanted to do her journey. She was in no rush, so she was quite happy to basically just walk from one town to the next town and then stop there for the day. And, you know, she's like, I'm retired. If it takes me 4 months to walk the whole thing, well, so be it. I'm just enjoying the journey. So, you know, I think that's a really lovely way that, you know, really the Camino can be what you want to make it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And did you make it in the 5 weeks, or how long did it take you in the end?
I did in 35 days. So, actually, I think it may have been 34 days, actually, because the last third I did actually walk a lot quicker, which was okay, because I think in terms of like the scenery and the landscape, I definitely think the first third I loved the most, going through, you know, the Rioja, and going, you know, like I just found that scenery beautiful. So I was happier that I wasn't quite as fast at that stage, because I just really enjoyed that first bit. And then obviously the middle is the meseta. Some people love it, some people don't. At the time of year that I was walking, it was after harvest. So there was a lot of just like empty brown fields with no shade, no greenery, you know, all the wheat's been harvested, the sunflowers have been harvested already. So there were some really hot days where there was, you know, like when you're walking with people, you're thinking, I can understand why there are some people that skip the meseta, but to me, I feel like, you know, that's the challenge part of the walk. That's the bit that really is the mental part, where you've got to, you know, there are some days where you're walking 30 Ks and it's one road, or you're walking beside the highway and it's just dead brown fields. And it's just like, ugh, but that's to me, that's the beauty of the Camino, is that the landscape changes so much. So, and then there was one albergue that I stayed at that was like, in the middle of the meseta, you walk through and they had this amazing green grassed courtyard with like yoga mats, and like it was literally like this oasis in the desert, because you've been walking all day and you feel gross and dirty, and you just got into this place, and it was amazing. So yeah, I just I'm really pleased that I walked at the time of year that I did.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And how do you then deal with those mental challenges? How do you make sure that you still continue and take the next step and not give up?
Yeah. Well, I think with me, I took music with me because in 2014 I must have not been into podcasts at that stage, so I just had like an iPod with me with music, and I found that I actually just loaded it with a heap of like Aussie hip hop music. So just stuff that I found that I knew that would just give me like a pep in your step if you're just having, a time where you're just sort of trudging along, because, when there's nothing to look at, when you are going through these sections where it's all just dry fields, and it's at 10:30 in the morning and the sun is beating down and it's like 37 degrees and you're like, oh my God, and I still have 18 kilometers to go. Like, they are the times when you just think like, why am I doing this again? Like, why did I think this was a good idea? So I find either if you've got someone that you're walking with, that's a great time to sort of pass that, getting to know people. And as I said, a lot of the clientele that was walking at that time were older people, like mid 60s, because I guess to me that's probably the demographic that has the time to walk such a long distance, unless they're like, students coming from Italy or something that come across and just do like a week in their school holiday, or their uni holidays, and then the next year they come back and do the next section. When you're coming from the US or from Australia or from New Zealand, like, it's a long way to come. So most people don't have that much time. So I feel very lucky that I could at the age that I was. But, it's a really great time to meet other people and to learn about their lives and why they're walking. And, I think it's pretty obvious on the Camino, if there's somebody that's walking that doesn't want to chat, like, it's quite obvious with body language, or they've got their headphones in and you sort of know. But, otherwise you say, you just start walking next to someone and you're like, hey, how you going? How you feeling today? And then, you start chatting, and all of a sudden, you've walked 7 Ks to the next town, and the boring scenery doesn't matter. Or, if you've got a challenging hill ahead of you, you just, you're chucking your headphones and you crank a tune that is going to give you like the oomph to get up there. So, yeah. So it was, and it's, it's fun, swapping music and listening to like what other people listen to and whatnot. So yeah, it's definitely, music is a big part for me, and I just, I found even there's some days when you're just not feeling like super social, so you're the one that just chucks in your headphones and you're like, off you go. So yeah,
that's amazing.
So besides the shin splints and the empty fields that are a bit less interesting, what would you say would be the highlight of the trip?
Oh my gosh, it's probably a bit cliche to say, but I would say the people that you're walking with, because there's something about the Camino that, people have been walking this for hundreds of years, and it doesn't matter. You don't have to be a certain age, you don't have to be a certain background, a certain gender, a certain fitness level. Anybody, if you can put you don't even have to put 2 feet in front of the other, because, there were like parents who had their kids, there were people on bikes, there were, people walking with crutches and whatnot. So I just feel like it's a great equalizer, and anybody who really wants to have a go can have a go. And there's this amazing sense of camaraderie from everyone, whether it's, there was no time, well, the only time that I ever would say that I felt unsafe was when I was walking out of Pamplona. And it wasn't by fellow pilgrims. I got there on a Friday, so I was leaving on a Saturday morning. And at the time I was walking, you leave at 6 a.m, but it's still dark. So Saturday morning at 6 a.m, there's still these like drunken Spaniards coming out of the bars. So there's a few like loot, and when you're walking by yourself to get to sort of where the route started, it sort of goes through the town centre. So, there's a few lewd comments, but that would be the only time that I would ever say that I felt unsafe. The rest of the time, there's this amazing community spirit around you. And whether it's, people offering to share, medication or first aid kits, or helping you with your blisters, or sharing food with you, or just help, if you've been sitting on the ground and you need a hand up to, help, pull someone back upright, or, it's just, or, hold a bed for someone if, that you've got a friend that's coming and you want to stay in the same place. So I just feel like, like the camaraderie and the community spirit, and just being able to meet people from all over the world, because I just can't think of any other context where you would sit around a table at nighttime with a whole range of ages and, you know, backgrounds of people, and you'd all have a conversation together. Like, I just can't, you know, you stay at a backpacker hostel, you're not going to get well, you probably won't get, you know, like 65-year-olds staying with you and having a chat. So I just feel like it's just this great sense of community spirit that you don't really find anywhere else.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You just mentioned blisters and your preparation and walking in your shoes. How did that go?
Perfect. I did not get one blister, nothing. So, and I think I grew up as a scout. So to me, like, you know, being prepared is like in my blood. So for me, I think it was definitely like making sure that my shoes were totally worn in. I had worn my shoes for like 6 months with the socks that I was going to wear. I wore them on like every walk that I did. So, and then like heeding the advice of people saying, if you start to feel a hot spot or something's rubbing, stop straight away. Don't wait till you get to the next town in 5Ks, because by then it could be too late. So I remember, I think it was in Pamplona actually, and the girl on the bunk above me. So Pamplona was, I think, day 3 of walking. And the girl on the bunk above me, I was like, oh my God, you poor thing. I reckon this blister that she would have had on the bottom, it was like underneath her big toe. It would have been like a 20-cent piece size. And I just thought, like, I don't know if there's a blister Band-Aid that's big enough to be able to cut, like, and also I was like, how is that even possible? Like, what have you done to get such a huge blister? So I know that poor, and I think she actually had to go and try and buy new shoes or something, because she was not in a good way. But yeah, there was lots of like gory, like people sitting around comparing their feet and like who's got the worst, like a bit gross, but you know, war stories really, you know. But again, you know, it's, you know, people are saying, you know, there's lots of advice at the same time. So someone goes, oh, that's a really light gnarly blister, you know, here I've got some Compeed patches, or I've got something you can use. So it's sort of, it's like being in a triage ward at a hospital where everyone's sort of, or somebody had a stack down the hill and, you know, they slipped on the, you know, the Roman road, which was slippery, and, you know, they fall over with their backpack and they've skinned all their knees and they don't have any first aid stuff with them, but somebody else has stopped to help them. So yeah, that's gross, but really good.
Yeah.
And you've been looking forward to walking the Camino for 4 years. How did it live up to your expectations?
Oh my God, I almost think that it exceeded it, because I had in my mind, like I sort of imagined what it was going to be like. But then when you walk it, you know, it's so much better and harder, but easier, but more complicated, but, you know, mentally more challenging, but mentally easier. Like, just there are so many facets to it that I just think, you know, when I got to the end, like part of me almost like was grieving, because I couldn't believe that this thing that I had looked forward to and planned for so long, and then walked it, and then I'd stopped in Santiago. I didn't walk on to Finisterre. I remember sitting in the hotel that night and almost crying, because I was like, it's over. Like, what am I going to do now? I can't just go back to like real life. And that's when it really hits you that you go, I understand why people come back and do this again and again, or they strap it on and they just walk back the other way and go back to, you know, where they started from. And because there was this one guy that I met at one stage, all he did was just walk back and forth across all the time, met a dog, and that's all he did. And I was like, and that was early in my journey. And I was thinking, like, are you a bit like crazy? Like, why would you do that? But when you get to the end and you go, this has been such a great experience. And I think, look, there's definitely elements of, you know, looking back with rose-colored glasses, and, you know, you forget that there are some parts that were really challenging, but overall the positives of the experience just override everything else. And, you know, even trying to explain it to my parents, who couldn't believe that I wanted to go and walk 800K to start with. They thought I was a bit crazy. And then, you know, when I had done it, and they were like, we're just so impressed that you've done this, but why do you want to do it again? And they're also like, you've walked it now, like, what's it like? Why would you want to go and do it again? You've already done it. And I'm like, that's the Camino for you though. Like, it just gets you in there. And then, you know, like, you just want to do it again, or you want to walk, you know, Camino Norte or the Portuguese route, or you want to start further in France. So, you know, there's so many options that are available. basically, as soon as I got back, I was like, when can I go again? I've got to build up leave, and I'm like, I'm ready to do it again. So yeah, I would love to. That's one of my dogs having a sook in the background because I haven't had dinner yet.
So you wouldn't have the ambition to do other hikes, for example, close to the
or other hikes as in other Caminos, or just other hikes in
other
general?
hikes in general? Yeah.
So I think what really draws me to the Camino is I like the fact that you don't have to carry the world on your back. You can just carry like your clothes and your food for the day, and you are walking through, you know, a town, or not even a town, you know, a tiny village or something every, you know, you walk through a couple every day. So you can stop and have coffee. You've got somewhere to stop and have, you know, dinner. You can stay in a bed. You don't have to be camping. To me, doing something like, you know, like the PCT or the Appalachian, where you've got to carry all your stuff with you, like your tent, you've got to carry all your food. I was like, I think I don't think I would enjoy the experience as much as something like the Camino. But I would definitely, I have actually been researching about starting further in France. So starting on one of the other routes that start further in France, and then getting up to the Pyrenees, and then doing the original trail that I've already done from there. That's definitely something that is tugging on my heartstrings quite a lot. But that will mean, you know, it's about, you know, it's probably another 5 weeks of walking before the French route. So it's 10 weeks altogether. So I'm thinking like 10 weeks, I probably need to get 12 weeks of leave off work. So how am I going to get 12 weeks, you know, 3 months of leave off of work? But we'll see. And then, you know, of course, with COVID now, it's like, when are we going to be able to get back overseas? So this is certainly sort of, I guess, turned me inwards a bit in terms of looking at what other hiking options we have in Australia or New Zealand. So I've started looking more now at the Larapinta Trail or the walks you can do down in Tasmania. The closest sort of thing that we got to, we have a trail here. We have a trail here in the ACT called the Centenary Trail. So it's basically about 150 Ks, and it goes all the way around the outskirts of the Australian Capital Territory. So I did that over consecutive weekends in September, October, which seems to be my like hiking season. And it's a 7-stage walk. So I did that over consecutive weekends last year. And that actually I really enjoyed, because I mean, you come back to your own bed each night, so you're not camping out there or anything like that. But I've lived in Canberra for years, and there was so much that I saw on that walk that I just didn't even know existed in Canberra. And, you know, like different views, or different like mountains that I'd never walked up before, and you've got different panoramas that you can see of the ACT, walking through national park areas with like echidnas and, you know, shingleback lizards and all these sorts of things that you're just like, wow, I had no idea that this was literally in my own backyard. So that was really enjoyable. But yeah, I definitely would like to do a bit more walking again in 2021.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. Larapinta is on our wish list as well. So yeah,
hopefully this year. Yeah.
Well, so I started looking, because again, it's one of those walks where, you know, theoretically you're supposed to, you know, bring all your stuff with you, because you can't buy anything along the way. And there was one company that I looked at that does it's almost, and they do this on the Camino as well, for people who probably aren't really wanting to bring their own stuff and organize their own accommodation, that does small group things where you still bring your own gear, but they have a 4-wheel drive that essentially sets up swags and food. And I was like, that sounds more like my option. Anyway, I went and looked. They are totally booked out for 2021. Every single one of their 40 departures, totally 100% booked, and about half of their departures for 2022 are booked out as well. And I was like, oh, okay. So I guess the flip side of COVID is that everybody is trying to explore their own backyard a bit more. So I might have to think a little bit further ahead and book in now for next year, and then at least I've got something exciting to look forward to.
True.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, quite surprised though.
Yeah.
Oh, so was I, because I was thinking I'm so organised, like looking at things in, you know, December last year. There's heaps of time, because their walking season is generally not over summer. So they normally sort of walk from late March to September. So I thought, plenty of time, every single departure, 100% booked. I was like, Okay, well, great for them.
Oh, definitely.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And
I know.
to get back to the Camino, you mentioned that it started all with reading that extract that was basically food related. How was your experience in regarding to the food in material?
Well, I don't think it was as romantic as the way that this book had come across, which was like, you know, seeing asparagus, wild asparagus growing in the fields and speaking to farmers. Well, maybe it was because of the time of year I was walking as well, but there was no food apart from grapes, because we were walking, you know, colloquially with the we of everyone else walking. We were walking at harvest time in the Rioja, so all of the grapevines were full of fruit. And actually, as we were walking, they were having there were little towns, like we went through. I think when I went through Viana, they were having all these little like harvest festivals where everyone was wearing like white with red ties around their necks and letting off fireworks in the street. And we were like, where's the like OH&S safety around? People running with like literally with like fireworks coming off their like these things on their heads. And I was like, oh my God, we crazy Spaniards. So yeah, so it was really nice. That was probably the best like free food we had, was basically like we duck into, you know, the rows of grapevines and just quickly like steal some grapes off. And then obviously there's a wine fountain that's in that part of the walk as well, where there's essentially it's a fountain that comes out of the wall that's connected to a vat of wine, so pilgrims walk past and you can have a drink of wine for free. So unfortunately, I walked past at about 6:30 in the morning, so probably like a little bit early for wine for my taste. But yeah, that was. I think that's also why I really enjoyed the first part of the walk, because it was still walking through things that were in, you know, produce and stuff. I didn't mind. So some people get really sick of repetitive food, and basically everywhere that you walk, when you stop in town that night, the restaurants have like a menu del dia, a menu of the day, which is like a pilgrim's menu, which is essentially almost the same everywhere you go. So it's a salad to start with, and it's always the same salad, like the ingredients are the same.
Yeah.
And then it's like some sort of like, hey, shh, I'm talking. You can go and lie down. Sorry. You can go and lie down. Some sort of like meat dish, and then dessert is like flan, which is like some creamy dessert thing. So that's pretty much, and it's 10 euros. So like every time you get to a restaurant, that's like the pilgrim menu for everyone. And everyone had warned you in the forums, they're like, you'll be sick of this menu because you're eating the same thing like for weeks on end. I didn't mind. I thought the food was really good. So to me, I thought it was delicious. I think if you were vegetarian, you might struggle, because there was a lot of like meat heavy stuff. But I was like, I'm walking, I need the iron to keep the energy up. So, you know, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. And you don't have, like, you know, there is, you know, although there are lots of, you know, especially when you get to larger towns, like if you got to Burgos or Leon, there are heaps of restaurants. So you've got lots of places that you can choose. There's also lots of the hostels that have kitchens in them. So if you're that way inclined and you're on a budget, or you prefer to cook yourself, you've got that option for you as well. I couldn't be asked to cook for myself. I'm on holidays. So to me, I was happy to go out and eat. Yeah. And there was, you know, a couple of places that did paella, or when you're walking through certain towns that have like a specialty, like when you get further towards the end near Sarria, there's a town that specializes in octopus, which I found hilarious because it's nowhere near the sea. So I'm like, why is octopus your thing? Like, you have to bring it in, right? So there's a few like regional specialties as you go. And that's the great thing, you know, we're walking across the breadth of a country. So you're going through all of these different, you know, ecosystems and climates and regions of food as you go. So you're moving from really, you know, Basque country, heavy food, to the lighter food when you get over to the Santiago side. I really, no romantic, you know, finding foraged food in the field for me. But I really enjoyed it. And I mean, I love to eat. So I'm not a fussy eater, so I pretty much eat just about anything. So I think, if you're a vegetarian, you might struggle a little bit, but I'm not vegetarian, so I was happy to eat
Yep.
everything they threw at me. I was like, yep. And you know, you're bloody starving by the end of the day because you've been walking all day. So really, like, to me, I'll eat anything you want to put. You know, you're in a town that there's not that many options. I'll eat whatever you're going to put in front of me because I'm grateful that there's somebody here who I don't have to cook and I just get to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and there's always wine included and bread included. So, and then you're just chatting, you know, you're around the table chatting with people who have stopped there for the night or people that, you know, you've caught up to, or, you know, it's just, yeah, it's a really great experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's great. And how did you, like, do you feel that the hike has changed you in any way?
Well, I still think about it a lot. So, and I think my friends and family just got sick of me being like, so when I was on the Camino, so this day on the Camino, because we'd talk about something and I'd be like, oh, that reminds me of this time on the Camino. And it became a bit of my, like, you know how in American Pie, because like this one time at band camp. So to me, like my line was always like, oh, this one time on the Camino. And everyone's like, could you just shut up about the Camino? Like, we get it, you did it, you loved it, it was amazing, but like, move on. It was like 3 years ago. And I was like, but it's still in my head. So I think in a way, I just, it's become part of like who I, like it really becomes, I feel like a defining part of who I am, because I have so many memories that are tied back into that, in just that, you know, 5 weeks. But it's not just the walking, it's the planning and all of the energy that I put into the trip beforehand. That I think is why I feel really, it's not like I just woke up one day on a whim and went, hey, I read about this thing, let's go and do it like next month. So I think to me, that's why I find that it resonates so much with me, because like I thought about it for so long and then came to doing it. It's, you know, it's a big chunk of my life.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's amazing that you had such a long time as well to prepare for it and get everything ready.
Yeah. And then, you know, it's funny because when I talk about it, you know, there are people who, you know, through work or something, I mentioned something and they go, oh, that's something that I've been looking at doing, or, oh my God, I walked it too. And then you're off on a whole nother tangent of conversation because you're like, oh my God, okay, so let's talk about this. Do you remember when you got to this town and did you do this and blah, blah, blah? Or, you know, people who are thinking about going, I'm like, okay, I can give you all the information. You can look up this and I can tell you this. And, you know, it's just, you almost, you know, you're part of this family who's walked, that you want to impart your knowledge and wisdom onto other people now. So you want to help them have a great experience as well. So that is one thing that I find I get a lot of pride about, because I'm like, well, I've done this and I would love to share my experiences with someone else and, you know, help them have an amazing experience as well, because that's what I feel like I got from reading message boards and talking to people and learning from other people's experiences. So if I can help somebody not get blisters or not have to pack stuff that they don't end up using, therefore they don't have to carry a heavy pack as far, like, I'd love to do that.
Definitely. Are you, because you mentioned at the beginning that you read a lot of forums and was really active there, are you still active and sharing your experience as well?
So I think probably once I got home, I was for a little bit, like for probably maybe like 6 months afterwards. And then it did drop off after that, because it was sort of like, I felt like I'd contributed a lot to my like recent experience. But then there were people who had just finished walking, you know, 6 months or a year after I'd finished, who had probably like, they had more recent information that they could provide about, you know, new hostels that had opened, or, you know, something else that had changed, so they could give more like updated information. But I just found that it was just such a helpful community, and especially being on the other side of the world, and not that many people that I had known, that I had spoken to beforehand had done it. So I didn't have a lot of people to talk to find out about their personal experiences. So this was sort of the next best thing that I could do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you said that you did a lot of preparation, got your gear. You didn't discard any gear on the trail. Was there anything you felt was missing?
No. Oh, actually, the only thing I think that I probably should have packed, because I bought it when I was walking, when I got to Pamplona, because I got so burnt on the first day, I actually, and I was just wearing, like, my t-shirts that I packed were just round neck. So I ended up buying like a bandana that I tied around my neck to keep my neck less sunburnt as I walked. And I bought I bought a Camino cap. so I had a hat which had more shade, because the hat I didn't bring. I bought a buff that I used as like a headband, but I didn't bring a hat I didn't bring a cap, because there was a bit of debate with people saying I brought one and then, you know, I never used it. So I thought I won't bring one. And then I felt like a hat's an easy thing to buy. Like if I need it as I go, I can buy it. Oh, and the other thing I bought was I bought a walking staff. So again, a hot topic in the Camino forums about, do you bring walking sticks or not? Because some people found them really useful and some didn't. And I elected not to, because I'm like, I'm young. Like, what do I need walking sticks for? And then when I got to St. Jean, I got like a bit of FOMO, because I was like, I was walking past like the tourist stores that have like these staffs and stuff. And I was like, oh, maybe I do need one. No, I don't need one. And then I walk past another shop and go, maybe I do need one. So then I like tried out a couple and I was like, oh, this feels a bit stupid. And then I thought, you know what? It might be useful because you're going over the Pyrenees that day. And then, you know, like on the downhill, I've never walked with walking staffs. So I was like, well, and you know what? I thought I can buy one. And then if it's a bit shit and I don't really use it, I'll just like leave it somewhere or whatnot. So I bought one and I used it the entire way. I ended up rubbing all the varnish off the top. It went down to wood from like using it on my hand the whole time. I got so attached to it. I actually, because it's a stick, you can't take a stick on the plane. So when I got to Santiago, I found a hardware shop and I got them to cut it in half for me so I could pack it in my suitcase and bring it home. And my boyfriend at the time, when I got home, he's like, what is this? And I'm like, it's my walking stick. And he's like, but it's cut in half. And I'm like, yeah, because that's the only way I could get it home. I couldn't get it home any other way. And he's like, but why did you need to bring it home? I'm like, because it's a part of me. It walked 800 kilometers. It's like attached to me now. I can't let it go. He's like, but it's cut in half. You can't use it as a walking stick. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So it's in my cupboard. I know, I sound so crazy. Now I think about it out loud. I'm like, oh my God, that was so... Even the guy at the hardware shop was like, what? But he did it because I was this like crazed pilgrim. I was like, I need to bring it home with me, please, just cut it in half. So that's the only other thing that I bought with me, like while I was walking, that I didn't pack. So I think definitely my suggestion to people is like, if you feel like you're not going to use walking sticks, you don't have to pack them from home, because you can always buy them when you get over there. Or you could be like me and get FOMO and think, I need a stick to walk with, and then buy one from the tourist shop for €10, and then it becomes attached to you and you can't be without it.
Do you still have it?
Yes, it's in my cupboard. So I have in my cupboard, I still have all my notes. I have like all my notes of like where I was staying and how much I walked and the maps and stuff. My neck scarf, I took with me from Lush. It's like a little shampoo, like a soap that you can use as a soap, and a shampoo and a clothes wash. So I still have my soap in the tin, because every time I smell it, it reminds me of the Camino, because it was this one scent. So because I use it every day, like that smell is like Camino smell to me. So even though it's like this tiny bit of soap, I can't throw it out because it's like Camino to me. So yeah, I have like one little box of like Camino, and my shell, my scallop shell that was the other thing I bought. I bought a scallop shell to put in my backpack when I was over there. So I've got that, and I've got like my buff, but yeah, everything else like was all just clothes I already wore, or stuff that I'd worn in. But yeah, there's a few like little mementos like that just will stay in the box. I'll probably, if I can hopefully get over to walk it again, I'll take the scallop shell with me and I'll be able to put that on the backpack. And then I might have to see if there's a way that I can get some sort of like screw insert into my walking stuff, so I can like screw it back together. So when I get over there, I can walk with it again, because it's got some good memories, and useful, because there was one, I'm just trying to think where I walked out of this day, where there was basically two ways you could walk. One was like straight ahead through the valley, or the other way was going up over this like mountain range, and that was like way harder, and that was the way that I picked. But the turn off to it was in the dark, because that was the first thing in the morning, and I didn't see another soul like that entire day. But it was useful having the stick, because I was walking in the dark up this mountain path, like not very like well. Like it wasn't a very good path. So I used it as like a spider clearing stick, just in case there was like spiders in the dark ahead of me. And then I was like, I can use it as a weapon. If I like get attacked by someone, I can like smash them with it. So, it was useful. Or, you hear about, like I read all these issues of people saying there's issues with stray dogs and like feral dogs attacking you. I did not see any feral dogs at all my whole walk, but I was like, well, if I get attacked by a feral dog that comes out of like some random, you know, piece of bushland, then I've got a stake that I can, you know, scare them off. So pleased to say I didn't need to use it for that, but it was very useful in like swooshing away potential spiders. So I know. Didn't think you'd hear about this when you're talking to me, did you? The crazy girl who brought a stick home.
I can totally understand though. I can relate to it personally.
Oh, good.
Perfect. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you still would like to share?
So I think I didn't really know what to expect. So the first day that I walked over, so in my mind, like I wasn't coming as like this really broke student who could only stay in like shared dorms and had no money. Like to me, I was like, well, you know, I'm happy to stay in shared dorms, but if I need to stay in, you know, like one of like the hostels where it's like the private room, and that's what I ended up doing probably about every fourth night I'd stay in one of those and spend like 30 euros so I could have like my own bed, I could have a shower, I could sleep like without being in a bunk with snoring people around me. So that was really good just to have like a little reset yourself as well, have a good night's sleep and feel like ready to go the next day. But the first day, because I had left the B&B later than other people were walking, and then by the time I'd walked up and over the Pyrenees and got into Roncesvalles, the only accommodation that was left was the overflow accommodation, which is the giant big hall of beds, which is like from the movie The Way, the one that he stays in, which is just this cavernous room. And it's got 3 rows of bunks. And what they do is they push the bunks together. So it's basically like a double bed. So you've got 2 single bunks, but they're pushed together. So when you get there, they just give you a number and then you go and find your bunk that's got your corresponding number. So I've got up to like found my bunk, and it's a top bunk and it's pushed against another bunk. And there's this like young dude sitting there like with his headphones in. And I was like, hi. He was like, hi. So the first night you're basically sleeping in a bed, essentially, because they're pushed right, like they're right together. Then there's no gap. You're basically sleeping in a bed with a random stranger in a giant room. Like that was probably my like, oh shit, this is like not what I expected. But I was like, okay, don't be a prude, Jack. Like it's fine. Like everyone is in the same position here. There's like, you know, young, old, male, female. There's no segregation. You're just all in the room together. So that was definitely, and then the lights, they're giant big lights, like big spotlights in the whole building. So at 10 o'clock at night, the lights go out. That's it. So then you're in the dark. So you're like, if you're not in bed already, it's like, well, I got to get your head torch out and try and find stuff. And then almost instantly, 10 o'clock, lights out, snoring starts. And because it's one giant room, it's just this like cavernous cacophony of echoed snoring because there's all different people. And I remember lying in the bed thinking like, how am I going to sleep tonight? Like I'm exhausted and I've sunburned, but I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to sleep. Like, how do people sleep? And I had obviously had earplugs, but I was like, I don't know how I'm going to sleep. And then like there's this guy like right next to me. So that was definitely like confronting. And so I think I learned quickly, like, you know, you can't really have any inhibitions on the Camino. And because there are hostels you stay at where, you know, there's male and female showers, but in the showers, it's like 4 shower stalls, no doors, it's just shower stalls. So you want to have a shower, you've got to get nude in front of everyone because that's just how it is. So, and then you learn like pretty quickly, you're like, you know what, everyone has a body, everyone's walking it together, like everyone's dirty and just wants to like have a shower and get into clean clothes. So I think it's definitely like you lose some inhibitions along the way because you're like, well, we're all in this together. So we just learn to be. But yeah, definitely that first night. And the movie The Way had not come out when I walked. So it wasn't until afterwards. And his whole reaction on the screen, I watched it with my parents and I was like, see, that was me. I was like that. That was my bed. See, with all the snoring. And they were like, okay, we get it. It was, but I was like, but see, with the beds, they're like right next to each other and you've got to sleep with a stranger. And they were like, okay, calm down. I was like, but I wasn't expecting that. So, because none of my research had told me that was the case. So I don't know whether that was like a new thing because the Camino had gained more popularity. So maybe they were trying to put more beds in, because in Roncesvalles, it's not like there's a whole town full of places to stay. So they have to really be able to cater for everyone that starts walking that day that makes it over the Pyrenees. So I think perhaps this was just, they were trying to cram more beds in so they could cater for everyone. But yeah, that was definitely like my rude awakening of like, okay, this could be the reality of walking. I'm just got to get on board with it. I can do this. I can do this. It's all right. I can do this.
But it only got better from there.
It did, yeah. And then, like, as I said, so that next night, actually, what I did, so I walked, that was Roncesvalles the first night. The next night was in Zubiri. And I actually rang ahead because I was like, I need a bed in a room by myself because I had no sleep last night and I'm exhausted already. And this is only day 2 and what is going on? So yeah, I booked myself a private room, got an amazing night's sleep. And then I was like, okay, I feel restored. I'm ready to go. And that was when I thought, okay, every few nights when I just need a night to myself, like I'm not on a super budget, I can spend 30 euros to just have the luxury of having my own bed, and then I can have a good night's sleep, and then I can deal with, another 2 or 3 nights of sleeping in a common area with snoring people and whatnot. So
yeah.
And then I treated myself a couple of times and stayed in really fancy places because, why not? And that was amazing because I could like wash my hair and, have a bath. So definitely like restorative, and then makes you feel like, yep, okay, I'm refreshed, I can keep going. So yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, and you need it as well sometimes, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Especially when you're walking for such a long time. It's not just like 2 weeks. So I think, yeah, if you can, treat yourself as you go. Because at the end of the day, it's not, unless you are an uber religious person and you actually are doing this as some sort of like religious pilgrimage and sacrifice, most people walking, I would say, are doing it for personal reasons, not for religious or spiritual reasons. So to me, I feel like, that's a holiday. It's an active holiday, sure, but it's a holiday. So you got to enjoy yourself as you go as well. So
definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. And what was the one piece of gear that you couldn't go without?
Oh, the one piece of gear. I think so. There's again a lot of debate around not only your shoes but what socks you wear. So I ended up walking with a pair of Salomon trail runners. So they're like a sneaker as opposed to like an ankle support hiking boot, because I tried on a heap of different variations in the shop, and I just found, for me personally, I don't like the restrictiveness of like a hiking boot with ankle support. And my ankles are fine, so I was happy with the it's like a trail running shoe, so it's got grip but not anything else. And I ended up going with pairs of Injinji socks, which are the brand of socks that have like the individual toe like gloves for your feet, which when you put them on, you're like, oh my God, this is so weird. But then once you've got your foot in the shoe, you don't notice the fact that you've got fabric in between each of your toes. But that's what reduces the friction, and it stops your toes rubbing on each other and stops the hot spots from forming. So definitely the socks, I think, were my saving grace and saved me from having any issues. And then probably the other thing that I can't live without sunglasses. Like I must have like super sensitive eyes. And again, there's a huge debate on like the forums about whether you should or shouldn't have sunglasses, because when you're walking, you've got the sun coming from one side for most of it. So some people are like, you don't really need sunglasses because you're not walking into the sun. It's sort of always on your side. But to me, you're out in the bright glare all day anyway. So you need to have sunglasses, otherwise it's just like, it's too bright. So, and I actually still have, they were like this cheap $20 pair of like service stations, polarized service station sunnies. I think I bought for like a music festival, and I was like, I'll just bring those, because then if I break them, it doesn't matter, I can just buy a new pair. And I still, to this day, still have them. I use them when I walk the dogs now. So they lived through the test of time with the Camino, and they've made a home for me now as well.
Perfect. Oh, that sounds amazing. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we close off?
I just think, if anybody is ever even having a tiny inkling of thinking about going, go and do it, because I have never spoken or met any person who ever said, you know, I walked the Camino this time, I wouldn't recommend it. I really regret doing it. Like, it is just an experience that changes your life. I know that sounds very big and dramatic, but it really does. And I just think that it's an experience that everyone takes away something different from. And you can really make it your own, and you can walk for whatever reason you want, and you can walk however you want. It's totally up to you. And you can, really make it your own journey. So that is, my one piece of advice, if even crossed your mind, if you were like me and you read it in a Qantas magazine and it just piqued this tiny, like, that sounds interesting, make a time and go and do it in your life, because you will not regret it. It's amazing.
Awesome.
Perfect. I think that's a beautiful tip to close off the interview.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. It was amazing to hear your story, and
really great talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it's my pleasure. As you can tell, I will happily talk to anyone about the Camino at any time. So yes, it was my absolute pleasure to relive it again.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you so much, and well, have a lovely evening.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your
evening. Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Well done.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. That was amazing.
That was really nice.
Oh, good. I'm so pleased because, as I said, like, once you get me talk, like, honestly, I'll just rabbit on forever about it, because I just, like, I think about things, like about the beds or about the stick or about, oh my God, the one thing I forgot, I just realized I forgot to talk about the figs. It's like, I was walking through this area and there was this, like, random, strange, like, old dude with a dog, and he had, like, no teeth, and he came up to me because he had, like, his shirt held, like he had something in his shirt, and he picked all these wild figs, so he came up and gave me all these figs, and I was like, okay.
Thank you.
Like, sure, why not? So I just, it's just, as I said, it's something that even now, all these years down the track, I still think about, like, almost, daily, because there's things that will happen that will just pique a memory or whatnot. So it's definitely the best experience.
Yeah.
Oh, sounds amazing. Yeah, I think at least for me personally, I think for a few years now, I've always told him, like, oh, I really want to walk the Camino. So hopefully one day
we will get there too. Yeah.
I know, right? Eventually, hopefully, when this crazy world starts to settle down again, we might be able to head back off overseas again. Well, I feel like in a way it might work in my favor, because by the time we're allowed to travel internationally, hopefully I've built up enough leave that I'm able to actually go again. And I'll have enough leave, and I'll be able to get permission from work to leave for a little while again.
You're still with the same employer?
I am, yeah. And I told them when I got back, I'm like, I'm just letting you know now, there will be a time in the future that I'm going to want to do this again. So I'm just letting you know, with, like, years and years of notice, you will get a request from me one day that I want to do this again. So be prepared.
Yeah.
Very good.
Nice.
That's amazing.
And totally random, different question, but which store in Fortitude Valley did you go to?
Oh, I think it's called K2.
Okay.
K2 Adventure. Yeah. And I liked them because they're not like a Paddy Palmer or something. They were chained, like they're independent. And I just found really amazing service. And, like, even though I was that nerd that came in with the list, I was like, okay, so I want, like, this pair of Salomon, blah, blah, blah. And I want, like, this brand of this Osprey, like this particular model. And he was a bit like, okay, you're organized. But I was like, no, I just like planning. So, and I was like, and these are the 3 pairs of shoes I want to try on. So I was probably in there for, like, half a day, honestly, trialing different backpacks, and they were happy to pander to, like, my every whim, basically, with letting me go through their whole store. So I was happy to support them with their business. And then, I packed everything into my backpack and walked out the store with it on. So I was and it was like, that was 2 years before I went, but I just felt like, well, everything was on sale, I might as well buy it now because I'm going to use it. So
yeah, true. It's always good to get a deal on hiking gear.
Well, because buying gear for this trip, it's expensive. Backpacks are expensive, shoes are expensive. You've got to, it's not a cheap exercise necessarily to do. So
No.
Yeah, but it was, well worth it. So, and there was probably only, I'm just trying to think, I think there was not many things that I bought and then decided not to take. Like, I think the only thing that I didn't end up taking that I had bought was like an inflatable like bed mat to lie on that you could it's like a little inch thick that you could inflate, because I was like, well, you know what, where am I ever going to use it? I'm going to be staying in bunks and I'm not going to, apart from, like with my shin splint where I ended up being, in a shed somewhere, but I was like, I probably don't, and that was like, well, that's probably going to take up room in the backpack. I don't need it. So that's probably the only thing I think that I bought that I didn't end up bringing with me.
Yeah.
Okay. So but no, everything else. And actually probably the only other thing that I took that I didn't use a lot of, I bought a silk sleeping bag liner. But then I realized that when I'm in a sleeping bag, I don't often just lie like straight up and down like in a sleeping bag. So what I ended up doing a lot was I just unzip my sleeping bag and use it like a doona, because I just sleep all over the place. So I didn't use that. But what I ended up doing was using the liner, and I used it as I covered the pillow with it, so that I had like a nice pillow, a silk pillowcase to lie on. So my hair stayed But that's probably, but that silk thing, it squishes up into a bag about this big. Right. So to me, I was like, well, if I don't use it every night, it's not such a problem. So yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Excellent.
Oh, yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
It was amazing to talk to you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. It was great to talk to you both.
Likewise. Enjoy your weekend.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.